Hello everyone, welcome to my Evil Within, Akumu difficulty, no upgrade / keys walkthrough, and this is Chapter 15, and Evil Within. And I think it's time I finish this fantastic game, and I finally finish this walkthrough. Chapter 15 really ends this game on a high note, with the kind of combat encounters they put you in, with the amount of enemy types you're encountering, and with the set pieces that it introduces. With the amount of respect that I have for Chapter 15, I made sure not to die in this whole chapter, and dying on this chapter is very easy in certain situations. This is not one of them. This combat encounter right now is really well designed, even though there are so many enemies that you're going to be encountering. This fight gives you back a lot of ammo, and you're going to be able to set up in a lot of power positions to be able to spawn kill a lot of the enemies. And you can even sneak kill these enemies as they're dropping down, because they're in preset animations. And in the beginning, there are going to be a couple of Haunted that will drop from this side of the arena, and you have to make sure you get rid of the guys with the guns. There is a chance that you will get 2 guys with guns that spawn from that side. I'm making sure I'm using the sniper rifle sparingly so that I'm getting a lot of headshots. I say sparingly, I use the sniper rifle like crazy in this part, because this is really the final part of the game where you need the sniper rifle. And you make sure, after you kill 2 of the enemies, you plant a shock bolt. By doing this, you'll be able to get rid of the guy with the assault rifle, and you'll be able to clear out additional enemies. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit in this back area over here, and I'm going to try to take out any stragglers that happen to come towards me. And you can move around this area very freely. You have a lot of mobility in this room. There's just a lot of really good spots to set up in. If the enemies are closing in on you, you have the advantage because they have to do a lot of these mantle animations, and then they have to run directly towards you. And by the time they've done all these lengthy animations, you've already set up in another position. It's so beneficial. And this is the last enemy of this first wave. And then there's going to be a spawn of a doppelganger and a couple of other enemies. You need to plant a shock bolt in this spot right here so you can spawn kill the doppelganger and a couple of enemies if you get lucky with the match. I placed it in the wrong spot just then. I placed it a little too far away from the doppelganger. Regardless of that, it's still a really good position because I'll be able to stun the Haunted that will spawn alongside him, and I'll be able to stun the hands as well. And I get very lucky there because the doppelganger gets stunned by the shock bolt, and then there's only one guy left. There are a couple of matches on this side where I'm at right now, and once that guy is dead, you will get a checkpoint. Now, for this checkpoint right here, you need to stand over here in this exact same spot. And feel free to use as many sniper rifle rounds as you want to clear out a lot of the stragglers that will appear on the other side of where you are. So we're just waiting. The game is going to indicate that the enemies are spawning based on the pulses that appear. And the enemies will always spawn in the exact same order. They will first spawn from that spawn point directly ahead of me. They will spawn from the right, and then they will spawn from the spawn point that is near me. For the ones that spawn from that spawn point directly ahead of me, I'm going to snipe them. There is a random possibility that there will be a Haunted with a gun. And if you see a Haunted with a gun, you've got to prioritize them before they get a chance to close in on you. That right there is a Haunted that has a gun. Any female police officer Haunted will always have a gun. And there is a possibility that there will be a male Haunted that will have a gun. Now, for these guys that spawn from my spawn point over here, I'm going to do a couple of sneak kills to punish their preset animations. And then, the guy with the crossbow, you gotta get rid of him very quickly before he has a chance to attack you. And now that he is dead, I'm going to use nothing but the shock bolts when it comes to dealing with the rest of the Haunted. The shock bolts really shine on this sequence, and they've shined on previous sections before, such as with Chapter 11, but since you have so many enemies running towards you, it makes total sense to use the shock bolts to deal with them, in order to stop them from closing in on you. And that right there was a really poor shock bolt. Planting a shock bolt on a spot where the enemies have a lot of trouble mantling up towards me is not the best choice. What I should be doing is going to this spot where the sadist spawns, and waiting for the enemies to mantle up towards me. And there's going to be a lot of enemies grouping up together when they decide to mantle up towards me. So this is the perfect spot to use the shock bolts right now. Just make sure you save a lot of trap parts for the explosive bolts, because you'll be needing a lot of explosive bolts for the Keeper boss fights, because you can get that boss fight done in seconds with nothing but the explosive bolts, and a couple of grenades in case you need them. But there are 2 enemies, and I'm just going to burn them with the match, and the sadist will spawn. And when you get close to the sadist, you're going to force him to drop the rocket launcher, but not before he gets one shot out. I know he's going to get one shot out right now, so I have to run for my life, and thankfully he misses. And now he's going to drop his rocket launcher, and he's going to swap to the chainsaw. And the sadist is going to start coming after you. So aside from him, there are 2 Haunted left. I'm taking the time to deal with them right now by using the ladders. Whenever the enemies climb ladders, they are incredibly vulnerable to attacks. It's just on this sequence, the enemies have a lot of trouble climbing ladders. This is the case for certain enemies. There are other enemies that have no trouble climbing the ladders. the female Haunted will not be able to go the full distance, but the Fat Haunted will. And I'm going to try to get a headshot on him, but it doesn't work. And to say this is going to go the full way, so I'm going to land a couple of shots on him, and I'm going to jump off. You can use an exploit with the ladders to get rid of the Sadist very easily, where you can just repeatedly punch him, and just get him to loop his kick move when he's on the ladder. But I didn't want to resort to this exploit. They're currently closing in on me right now, so I'm going to take the time to shoot that woman, and she dies. And then this guy is going to get absolutely demolished by the Sadist. This is one of the rare moments in this game where you get to witness the Sadist actually kill an enemy. And now that the guy is dead, I'm going to focus all of my fire on the Sadist. I could be using the ladders right now, but I just decided to run around the room like crazy. And I'm going to try to use everything at my disposal. I'm currently out of ammo on my shotgun, and I do have a couple of shots with my pistol. And what I'm trying to do right now is I'm trying to weaken this guy so that I can kill him with the flash bolts. And if I hadn't been screwed by the random variable on my Magnum, I could have easily weakened this guy a little bit faster than what I'm doing right now. And the reason why I try to weaken him to that threshold is because finishing this guy off with the knife feels like the most epic way to end this whole entire fight. Because this fight is absolutely amazing. Every single combat encounter in this game has been so enjoyable. I don't really get that with a lot of games nowadays. There are just a lot of games out there where only about 90% of the combat encounters are actually fun, and then the other 10% are just really bad. This game, every single encounter on this game has been perfect. There hasn't been a single bad encounter, whether it be a combat or a stealth encounter. Even the boss fights are so much fun. As I've already acknowledged before in Chapter 10, every single boss fight on this game is enjoyable because the bosses die very fast. And because you have a diverse arrangement of weapons, you're afforded a lot of flexibility with the combat encounters, and that only adds a lot to the replayability of this game. And this game is pretty challenging, and it's definitely one of the hardest games out there, for sure. I mean, you will not believe the amount of people that absolutely struggled with Akumu difficulty when it first launched, and they were calling the difficulty bullcrap and annoying. But I'm sure, after you view my whole entire walkthrough, you will understand that those claims that people make about Akumu difficulty are completely false. This difficulty is one of the best difficulties ever made. This game is one of the best games ever made. Shinji Mikami is an absolute genius when it comes to making survival horror games, and when it comes to making such satisfying and memorable experiences like what you get with this game. And to say this is almost dead, I'm going to lay into him with a couple more shots. I thought I had weakened him perfectly enough to actually finish him off with the knife, but that was not the case. This guy has a lot of life. But thankfully, it's not to a degree where I just end up using up all of my ammo just to kill him. And this is the final blow right here, and he is dead. And that is the end of this amazing encounter. Now that he's dead, go ahead and take the time to scour the area for some ammo before you proceed onward to the next encounter. And the next encounter coming up is going to be the boss fight against the dual keepers. And it's actually the final boss fight of the game that requires ammunition. The actual final boss of this game is just a cinematic fight. So even if you were to come out of that boss fight with very little ammunition, you don't need it whatsoever. But don't think for 1 second that just because the actual final boss fight is a cinematic boss fight means that it's going to be a lame boss fight. The actual final boss fight of this game is a lot of fun, and I just like doing the kind of things you're doing within that boss fight, and it was actually the most stressful moment of Chapter 15 for me, because I wanted to try to do this entire chapter without dying, and the final boss fight, doing it without dying can be pretty tricky because of two specific moments that occur within the boss fight, but I'll get to that once I get to that boss fight. Right now we're dealing with two groups of Haunted. Each group consists of one sniper guy and one dynamite guy. For the right group, wait until the sniper fires, and then move to the right a little bit to get the dynamite guy to prep his dynamite, fire a harpoon bolt, and he will blow himself up and his friend. The left group, you gotta kind of stand where I was to get the sniper to stand up from cover, but not shoot you. Snipe him in the head, and there are a couple of sniper rounds over here, so I'll be able to use that to my advantage. So, there he is. He's not gonna fire at me because he only fires when you're on the left-hand side of the room. And there he is, and he is dead. Now there's just the dynamite guy, and the dynamite guy is very easy to deal with because he's very slow to throw his dynamite. Oh, actually, no, I got rid of the dynamite guy. So, now that they're dead, just pick up the ammo that they drop. They will always drop sniper ammo, shotgun ammo, and pistol ammo. And now we're about to make our way over to the Keeper encounter, which I've sped up to roughly 4 times speed, because the strategy I'm going to be utilizing against the Keepers, it absolutely trivializes this boss fight if you have enough ammo for it. And since I've been saving my ammo very easily in this game by utilizing the strategies you've seen me do in this walkthrough, I have enough ammo to craft a lot of explosive bolts. And in case I don't end up killing the keepers, I have a grenade. And there are a couple of explosive traps in this room that you can use to your advantage. And there are a couple of trap parts. You have additional ammunition in this room. You have some sniper rifle ammo, you have some shotgun ammo, you have some pistol ammo. Like, you're pretty much set for this boss fight. And there are even a couple of chandeliers that you can shoot to damage the keepers with fire damage. Oh, by the way, if you're wanting to shoot the keepers at the beginning, do not shoot them during the rising animation. They're completely invulnerable. Wait for them to start walking and then shoot them. And that right there, that was nearly my entire arsenal of explosive bolts, and it somehow didn't kill them. And thankfully, I managed to kill that one keeper with a grenade, and then I'm able to finish this guy up with a shotgun. And that's the end of the boss fight right there. And there's me cheering. Yeah, it's so cool. That's a really fun boss fight. And also, if you get into any moments where you're forced to go into the blood, you can use the blind fire to move faster when you're in the blood. And the keepers are very fast when it comes to catching up to you. They have a charge attack that has some ridiculous tracking. And it is not impeded whatsoever by the blood, so they will retain full velocity with that charge whenever they're chasing after you. And if you're not blind firing when you're in the blood, you're done for. There's no getting out of it. I mean, what you can do to avoid any situations where you would have to go into the blood is you can use the spike trap that connects both of these rooms to block off the path of the keepers and force them to go the long way when it comes to getting to you. And if you keep using the spike trap to your advantage, the keepers will never get a chance to catch up to you. Since the keeper's mantle animation is so slow, you have plenty of time to go to the other room and just re-engage the spike trap to force them to go the long way, or you can try to take shots on them while they're mantling. Like, you have a lot of safe alternatives with that particular boss fight. And once that boss fight is done, you have no more enemies to deal with aside from the final boss. But here is a stealth encounter right now. And this stealth encounter, there are a couple of spotlights that you have to worry about, and the spotlights will not kill you, but they will teleport you back to the beginning. And there are a couple of bear traps here, there are wire traps, there are explosive traps. And since Sebastian broke his lantern before the big gauntlet fight, you don't have the advantage of illuminating your surroundings to see where the traps are, because there are times where it's kind of hard to see where the traps are. But thankfully the traps are always in the same position, so just follow the path that I'm taking, and you will be fine. If you want to get through the sequence a little bit faster, you can shoot the spotlights that are on the ceiling and temporarily disable them, which will give you a window of opportunity to get past them. But don't rush too fast, because there is a wire trap and a bear trap in the way. I'm trying to shoot the bear trap right now, but the random variable on the pistol is screwing me. Probably should have just used the harpoon bolt so I wouldn't get screwed by the random variable. And look at this. I'm trying to shoot the spotlight right now, but because of the fact that Sebastian can only look like 75% of the way up, I can't shoot it, which is pretty dumb. I don't know why developers have to put these kind of limits on how high you're allowed to aim. It's like in Resident Evil 6, like there's a limit to how high you can aim on Resident Evil 6, and one of the best ways of bypassing this is to go prone. And I use this kind of strategy against the chopper boss fight in Chapter 14 when you're playing as Sherry. Because when you're playing as Sherry on that section for Resident Evil 6, you can get Jake to boost you up, not drop the ladder so that the enemies can't get you, and then lie down on the ground and shoot the chopper with your grenade launcher. And it's a very effective strategy. And we made it past that whole entire encounter, and we have just one last thing we need to do. There's going to be a blade trap that spawns behind you, and you have to take the path exactly like how I take it. If you try to run through the blood, Sebastian's movement will be impeded, and he'll be forced to walk. And obviously, if he's forced to walk, you're going to get killed by this blade trap very easily. And now I'm just going to skip directly to the boss fight against Ruvik, because there's a bit of downtime before this encounter. And looking at this right now, it's definitely clear that Sebastian doesn't stand a chance, and he has to run away. And you have to hold the sprint button so that you can actually run away from Ruvik. And also, fun fact, if you try to look behind and see Ruvik, he will actually kill you, because apparently when you look behind you, it impedes your movement, even though it doesn't look any different. And if your movement gets impeded ever so slightly, Ruvik will just catch you very easily. It kinda sucks that this is the case, because I think having the ability to look behind you as you're running away from him would have added a little bit more to the cinematic experience for the player. And this is the final part of the chase sequence right here, so just take the path exactly like how I take it. The only threat here is if he catches up to you, which he's not going to be able to catch up to me since I'm holding the sprint button. And at this point, Ruvik is just getting absolutely fed up with me. He's had enough of playing games with me. He is the cat, I am the mouse, and he's going to force me out of my mouse hole right now. And there it is, the turret from Chapter 12, and we're going to use this turret to damage Ruvik right now. This phase of the boss fight is very easy. Focus all of your fire on Ruvik's head, and only shoot his arms when the game prompts you to. And at the beginning, the game's going to force you to prioritize his arm. And now when you've dealt with that arm, you're going to be able to lay into his head right now. I find the best way to damage his head in this phase is to aim for the rings. I think you have to aim for the rings in order to severely weaken him. Aiming for the glass doesn't seem to guarantee the flinch animation a lot of the times. And also, I believe the damage that you do to his head carries over into the next phase. And right there, I managed to damage his head once again because he did the flinch animation. And the reason why I think the damage in this phase carries over into the next phase is because there are times on the next phase where if you shoot his head twice, it will actually cue the cutscene that ends that phase. But most of the time, you're going to get moments where you have to shoot him in the head 3 times with the rockets in order to actually guarantee that the cutscene will trigger that will allow you to get to the final phase of this boss fight. And this phase of the boss fight is about to end once you drive away his arm one more time. And now that I've done it, Ruvik has had enough and he's just going to throw me out of here. And unfortunately for Sebastian, things get very bad for him. Oh man, that is so brutal. Sebastian is practically on his last legs at this point, and he has nowhere to run now. Ruvik has him, and thankfully, the sadist that we killed previously that had the rocket launcher is going to be over here, and we can use this rocket launcher to damage Ruvik. I'm glad that the game doesn't settle for any kind of Deus Ex Machina moment or Lucky Pass moment in this boss fight. The fact that they've given a reason as to why this guy is here because of the fact that we killed him is perfectly suitable for survival horror. I cannot stand Lucky Pass moments in survival horror games, and this feels perfect. But we have 15 rockets, and we have to hit Ruvik in the head 3 times, since apparently I didn't do enough damage to his head back in that previous phase. And there are a couple things you gotta bear in mind with the rocket launcher. The rockets that it fires can actually curve, and it's very easy at times to miss Ruvik. I mean, I find oftentimes when I'm aiming for his head, I don't get screwed a lot by the curviness of the rockets. And I think when Ruvik is in this flinch animation right now, he's not going to be able to take damage. I mean, I could be wrong, maybe he is taking damage, but maybe the minimum HP value has increased to 1 to make sure he doesn't get stunned during that moment. Because as you'll see right there, that took 2 rockets, so apparently the damage that I dealt to him during his flinch animation counted. So feel free to damage him as much as you want whenever he's in the flinch animations. And I just have to hit Ruvik in the head one more time. This can be panic-inducing for certain people, because there are times when you only have 1 rocket left and only 1 shot to the head to actually deal with Ruvik. And I find that the best way to deal with Ruvik if you're down to 1 rocket is to wait for him to get close to you and then hit him in the head while he's roaring. It doesn't have to be directly at his brain, it can just be directly at his head and it will count. And now for the most terrifying moment in this whole entire game. Just trying to do this whole entire chapter without dying, this is the part that gets me the most. Because on Akumu difficulty, the time you have to shoot Ruvik is less. And I miss most of the time on this final shot. But thankfully, on this recording, I did not miss. And you will not get screwed by the random variable, thankfully. And Ruvik is done. And we get to witness this explosive demise. Or supposedly his demise, because apparently we've destroyed 1 portion of Ruvik's consciousness, while the other portion escaped within Leslie, as indicated by the final cutscene and in the Executioner DLC. But it still doesn't change the fact that we have just dealt a massive blow to Ruvik. And there's just one last thing we need to do. And I find it very interesting the way the game progresses with this. We use the rocket launcher, we used a pistol, and now Sebastian is about to deliver one last blow to Ruvik, and it's going to be with his own body. It's so interesting. We don't need a rocket launcher, we don't need a shotgun, we don't need a magnum, we don't need a sniper rifle, we don't need a pistol, we don't need any kind of special weapon whatsoever. All Sebastian needs is his guts. It is his determination that allows him to finally finish off Ruvik by stomping his brain into absolute oblivion. And if there's one cool, original way to end a truly phenomenal and inspirational survival horror game, it would definitely be that. And with this penultimate conclusion at hand, it is time for me to end my Evil Within, Akumu difficulty, no upgrade /keys walkthrough. I have finally done this game justice by doing this. May Shinji Mikami's legacy live on forever in his future games. Stay tuned for the Evil Within 2. Thank you all for watching, and you take care now.